Welcome back again to my continuing story at Lotus Cars as the Lotus Guru. Right, we're now into 2012. So this year, Lotus are scheduled to launch a new model. It's called the Lotus Exige S. So, what's the Lotus Exige S? Previous Exige S had a 4-cylinder engine. The new Exige S will get the powertrain directly from the Evora. So it's a V6 3.5 litre supercharged 350 horsepower engine. I managed to get hold of an engineering prototype of this model so I can take it apart, have a look at it, write up an introduction course to be presented to the dealer network. So what's different to this car compared to the previous Exige? Well, the biggest change obviously is the engine, but the brakes are upgraded, the suspension is upgraded, body panels are changed, and I must say it is a very fast car. 350 horsepower in something as light as an Elise makes it really quick. I think if I owned one I'd probably lose my licence within a month. So I spent 4 weeks taking the car apart, putting it together, and then inviting the guys from the UK and Europe onto the training course. Not a bad uptake, it was quite interesting. A lot of the guys were interested to see it before I actually got to the dealers. Also this year we had a problem with oil line fittings on the Elise and the Exige. The problem was the hoses were popping off the end of the metal fittings at the front and at the rear. So you either ended up with oil being sprayed over your front wheels or oil being sprayed over your engine. It wasn't an ideal situation, so we had to issue a recall in the United States initially. Now the tooling that we used to fit the clamps around the new hosepipe fittings was made by a company called Otica, and the tools had to be calibrated so that they worked efficiently and could be a guaranteed 100% good fit each time. Now the original idea was for me to fly around the world to all different markets demonstrating the calibration of this tool. This of course would have cost a fortune, so I suggested that we make a training video that could be translated into different languages and distributed around the dealer network globally. I got together with a local filmmaker and we put together a short training video of about 7 minutes in duration that showed you how to calibrate the tool and to fit the clamps onto the hoses. We filmed this down at Longwater and it took about 8 hours to shoot the video, but to edit the video, which I didn't do, the guy done that, took him about 30 hours to edit the video, and I think the video in total cost about £1,000. So compare £1,000 for the video or thousands of pounds for me flying around the world, it was pretty good value I thought. But there was some markets that still wanted a live trainer, and this one market was the USA. So I flew out to the United States for a duration of 4 weeks. We trained, that's we, meaning me and Dave Simkin, he was my partner in all this. We did 2 weeks in Atlanta, training all the East Coast technicians. Then we flew to California for 2 weeks, all the West Coast technicians. At the end of the course, Dave and I was invited to the Lotus Owners Gathering in Orlando, Florida. Wow, was there some Lotuses there. There were some interesting guests there. One of them was Bob Dance. He's the legendary mechanic for Team Lotus. Bob's a really nice guy. What he doesn't know about Lotus Formula 1 cars isn't worth knowing anyway. And me and him had a good chat because he's also got an interest in Second World War airfields in Norfolk. Another guest was an American racing driver called Doc Bundy. Back in the 90s he had raced an Esprit X180R and won the championship, and he'd also driven many different types of Lotus cars and different types of American sports cars. A very successful American racing driver. And of course no Lotus function would be complete without my old mate Richard Paramin. Richard was there to give a talk and also to look after Bob Dance, though I don't know who was looking after who really. At the same time in the hotel there was some other kind of function going on. Didn't quite know what it was, but there was some very odd looking people around. At the end of the night, Dave Simkin, Arnie Johnson, who was the CEO of Lotus Cars USA, ended up in the bar for a nightcap. The very next day I flew home to the UK. So that's in 2012 nearly finished, but right at the end of the year in December I fly out to Australia to run a course on the introduction of the Exige S and the Exige S in Sydney. I then fly down to Melbourne to visit our dealer there, who was Zagami, and down there I arranged to meet up with Rex Colliver and Rob Notto, my old mates from Australia back in the day when I worked there. Also there was Bobby Zagami's sister, Rebecca. We sat down, had a coffee, had a good chat, and it was nice to catch up with them again. And one other important event in 2012 was the dismissal of Danny Bahar. That's it, we said goodbye to Danny, but it was the end of the Danny Bahar era and all the plans that he had for Lotus Cars and all the cars that he wanted to build. That was it, finished, no more. And we'll finish 2012 off with a quick look of the limited editions and different models that came out in 2012 from Lotus Cars. So here we are, 2013 now. Training wise in 2013 I was running the dealer introduction courses plus a couple of extra courses for admin staff in the dealer network for parts and warranty. Now you may remember that my Evora training car had been sold for a race car. This was replaced by an accident damaged 2011 Evora S, which is not bad. It had been rolled over on its roof, but mechanically it was all sound and good to use for training. I didn't have it very long and then it was sold. So all I had now for training was an 07 Elise. So for training I now had to use the production line as my training aid for any dealer technicians. After doing the presentation at Longwater, we went down to the factory and we did a tour of the production line. In this way I could show the dealer technicians the location of the components and how easy or how difficult it is to get to them. In July I flew out to Malaysia, to Lotus Cars Malaysia, for 3 weeks. We were having some issues with the IPS cars. Accompanying me on this trip was 2 powertrain engineers, Justin Boak and Stuart Knight. They would be looking after the transmission problems, and I was also investigating a problem we had with the chairman's Evora. This car was blowing out white dust particles from the face level vents, and it was quite obvious when you look at the car that they were coming out. Obviously he was concerned that this may be hazardous to him. So I had to remove the HVAC units from the cars and investigate where these white dust particles were coming from. Obviously it's hot and humid in Malaysia and the AC runs all the time. So after removing and stripping the HVAC unit, the only thing I could find was a problem with the HVAC drains accumulating water in the casings. This we believed was causing corrosion on the evaporator, which when it dried caused some white dust particles which when the AC was switched on blew through the vents. As a temporary fix for this, I drilled some extra drainage holes in the casings, but future evaporators were given an anti-corrosion coating by the supplier of the HVAC units. So hopefully that's the problem solved. In September, Roger Burton and myself fly out to Lotus Cars in Japan, in Tokyo, where we're going to run an Exige S introduction course and do some oil line replacements at one of the dealers in Tokyo. Now, this was my first visit to Japan, and I've got to say, what a fascinating country it is. If you want to see discipline and tidiness, go to Japan. It really is a brilliant place to go to. I loved it. The guys at LCI really looked after Roger and I really well. Nothing was too much trouble for them. Whatever we wanted, they would get us. After the course, Roger, me, all the guys that was on the course and the guys from LCI went out for dinner. I've got to say, the Japanese do like a drop of beer and having a good laugh. As we was there for 2 weeks, in the middle weekend, 2 of the guys from LCI, well 3 actually, took us to a weekend away at Mount Fuji at a resort, which was great. We got to see Mount Fuji, and we also went to Fuji Speedway, where they used to run their Formula 1 races. At the time, there was an event there for GTR Nissans. There was going to be a run around the track, but there was a typhoon heading in, so that had been cancelled. Here's a quick little slideshow of the highlights of that trip. In 2013 rounded off with a couple of more introduction courses and admin courses, and of course, as always, Lotus brought out some limited editions, and here they are. So here we are, 2014. Training consisted of mainly this year with technicians from Germany, Korea, China and Dubai. And of course I'm doing the usual technical support for the after sales wing of the company. Now in August I'm dispatched to Japan again. I fly out on the Friday afternoon and arrive on the Saturday morning to run a course on the Monday and Tuesday. This course is for the oil pipe recall special tool calibration, the same course that I run in America for the American technicians. I'm assisted in this by a guy called Hiro-san who works for Lotus Cars Engineering in Japan. He's my translator, of course, interpreter, and I don't speak Japanese, so he was much needed there. During this course we trained 21 technicians from the Japanese dealer network on how to carry out the calibration of the tool to carry out the oil pipe recall. The other big occasion in 2014 was the appointment of Jean-Marc Galles as CEO of Lotus and his autocratic style of management. It wasn't a happy time at Lotus then. And of course, there was a few limited edition cars. So that's it. That's 2012 to 2014 segment done and dusted. Next time will obviously be 2015, 16 and 17. Hope to see you for that. Until then, take care and so long.